Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. I want to thank everyone that is joining us live here for this kind of impromptu live stream today. And those of you watching the replay, I'm glad you came in and watched the replay. If you are here live with me, please pop in the chat and let me know that you can see my cheesecake here and hear me talking. That would be fantastic. We're going to be doing a mixed media piece. We're going to be using water-based markers. I'm using the mermaid markers from Jane Davenport, but I know they're kind of hard to find. So use whatever watercolor markers you have, or you could even use watercolors if you prefer. So make it work with whatever you have. We're also going to be using some colored pencils for some accents. I'm going to be using the paint over pens. I'm not sure they're the best product for this typical this technique we're going to be doing for highlighting, but I'm going to show you kind of what those are all about in case you were wondering about them. And we'll also put in some tiny highlights with a gel pen, I think. I'm not sure if I actually did that on this. I don't think I actually did that on here, but I think it'll give us a more opaque color. So what I have here is just a plastic watercolor palette, and I like to use this for mixing my colors and for kind of like starting my pens, because I don't want to risk getting a big splot of ink on my watercolor paper. And this also helps me conserve ink, because maybe I don't need a whole lot of a color. I can take my water brush, or you can use a wet brush if you don't have a water brush, and I can pick up that ink, and I can bring it over. So I can use that for anytime I want a more subdued color. And to clean your water brush, just simply squeeze it out and wipe it on a paper towel. Or if you're using a regular brush, just rinse it in your water. I'm going to just use some student grade watercolor paper. I have this Fabriano. It came in a Smart Art box, and I'm pretty familiar with that, so that's what I'm going to use. And I have the reference photo linked in the video description if anybody is interested. All right, so this is a Fabriano Studio. Somebody just asked, and this is Aquafine by Daler and Rowney that I did my example on here. So they're both student grade papers. You don't need anything too expensive for this. We're going to start off with a very pale color. I'm going to go with this really light. This color is called Beach. It's a really light kind of colored paper, and I'm going to do some sketching with this, and that because I know that pretty much anything will kind of go over that. And I'm going to start with a line down, and I haven't, if I want to start my pen off, it feels a little dry, I could just give it a little squirt on my palette. Okay, now that I see that ink is flowing, I'm just gonna pick it, just gonna tip the brush and pick it up. And if you have gone a long time without using your brush, you can like rinse it in some water and get the ink going that way too, because it will just reactivate the ink in the bristles. I haven't left mine alone long enough for that to happen, but I did have a different brand of paper in the past that a different brand of pens in the past rather, that I had to do that too. So we're going to start off by just getting that kind of pie shape in there. And I'm going to get a little bit of brown on my palette, because I know I'm going to want that. I'm just going to squeeze that out, because on its own it's going to be too much. And I am going to, I think I'll use my water brush to blend that around a little bit. And can you believe it? I've already misplaced my water brush. Well, we're going to go use a regular brush then, because that'll work just as well. So I can kind of soften any of the colors that I put down with just a regular old watercolor brush. The nice thing about, I did notice, like I don't have the Jane Davenport water brushes, but I do have the Prima ones, and they seem to be very similar. So it's kind of nice to swap between those two, because they have about the same kind of tip, so you don't feel it doesn't feel like a big change when you're going between those two. And if I need like a little more of a yellow or some other color that I've already squeezed on my palette, I can just go ahead and grab that, which is kind of nice. Kind of looks like a wedge of cheese too. If you get a little too much color on, what you can do is use a slightly stiffer brush, and you can gently kind of scrub and lift. This is a Maxine's mop. It's a brush that's made for toll painters and decorative artists. Artist Club carries it online. I don't know. You might be able to get them at like a craft store as well. I think mine came from a craft store. The one that was like a local craft store, not a chain. But that's a really just like the perfect softness for lifting on watercolor paper. Okay, and I'm also just going to kind of drag some of that color up here. Even though we're going to have some red up there, I just want to get a little bit of that tone there. And I'm also going to scrunch a tissue or paper towel and just kind of blot it a little bit to give it a little bit more texture. If you want to do the plate, you can. I would just kind of mix some colors on your, just kind of make some gray, maybe take some green and some of the red together, because I know I'm going to use those two colors. So I can make a gray that way. Those are opposites, so they make a gray. And I can just very lightly sketch in a plate. I'm not going to go for perfection here. I just want to get a general idea. These colors are not light fast, so that's why I tend to work on in a sketchbook with these, because they will fade. They also will tend to stain a little bit more because they're a dye versus a pigment. So that might be a little disconcerting for, excuse me, for some of you. So just kind of keep that in mind. I wouldn't, if you put down the ink, you have to kind of be prepared for it to kind of stay put. I was just grabbing some blue on my brush and adding that in. So I don't clean my palette between uses because I can pick up that ink and reuse it whenever I need to. Okay, not a perfect plate, but it's good enough. So now I'm going to go right in with the, actually I'm going to blast this with the heat tool for a second, and then I'm going to go in with my red marker. And I will be taking questions at the end of the tutorial, so if you've got a question, and you can always ask the moderators, they'll help you out, or any of the people in the community. But if you want me to answer it, just hold off till the end, and I will go through and gather some questions at that time. Oh, and I want to say congratulations to our moderator, Dominic, who's expecting her first baby. Very, very exciting stuff. I got a puddle there. I want to blot that so I don't get a blossom. Okay, so the color I'm going to use now is called Lobster. It's pretty much like a crimson red. It's really bright. And I am going to just kind of sketch in the topping. And I want this to be a little bumpy and lumpy because we got strawberries in our cheesecake here. And it comes down beyond the bend. And we can even put in some individual strawberries that we can see kind of sliced where somebody sliced the cake, and you can see it went through a piece of strawberry. It's kind of cool. Ooh, and I want to kind of, not masco, but I want to get there's like a little minted garnish. I just want to get that in there too before I get too carried away. There's a couple little leaves up there. We'll do more detail with that too with colored pencil, but it's just, we don't want to be doing colored pencil over red. Even though colored pencils do tend to be somewhat opaque, they're not really going to stand up against that red. They're translucent enough that that's going to show through. So I want to make sure I've got a base that's not red there. And I'm just kind of looking at my reference photo, and which is linked in the video description. And I'm getting in my darkest areas with this strong red right from the tube. I'm leaving a little border around the leaves there, because if that green whooshes into the red, it's going to create like a black or a gray or a brown. Remember when we just mixed our plate color, we used red and green? We did that intentionally, but if we do it on accident there, we're going to have something we don't want. Put those colors next to each other, they make each other look more vibrant, but if we mix them together, they neutralize. Well, it's kind of neat little trick that complementary colors do. I am leaving spaces blank where I want bright highlights, because it's going to be easier for me to go in with a pen, a paint over pen or a white gel pen, and reclaim that area if I haven't gotten a really thick layer. I noticed the paint over pens will pick up a lot of the color from what's underneath it. If you're going on watercolors, I think they're more designed to be used over acrylics, but they were very interesting and intriguing to me And I don't get down to Michael's very often, like maybe twice a year, so I grabbed them when I saw they had them. Actually, I lie. I called ahead and I had them save them for me because that's what kind of supply addict I am. All right, so there's some places that I want kind of a mid-range color. So I'm going to grab my brush. Really, I don't know what happened to that watercolor brush. My water brush, that was so weird. Okay, and I'm going to drag some of those colors around where I want a little bit of a lighter shade of red, like inside the sliced strawberries. Any place I don't, I want just a wash, like a lighter wash. I'll just drag that color around. And you can see that it does lift and move around pretty well, but just keep in mind that it lifts and moves around, but it also is staining. So you have to kind of just bear that in mind as you're working. I want to thank all the moderators that showed up on short notice. It's really helpful to have moderators because I know that I don't have to worry about somebody in the chat being nasty or anything. It really is awesome. Drag some like kind of drips of syrup down. I'm going a little bit more pronounced than in the photo because I think it looks pretty. And I kind of like to feather that color out a little bit because it's not as thick as it is on top of the cake, so you would be able to see more of the cheesecake showing through. And I can always put more on if I decide I want more. All right, now I want to get the sauce on the plate. Looks a little bit like a crime scene here for a minute, so bear with me. We'll get there. It's so pretty the way that people at restaurants garnish. And now I've got two different layers of color here. I've got a darker and a lighter, so I'm going to try to just go in and color in the darker because we have that reflection of the cheesecake. So I'm going to get the darker area colored in, and then I'll just drag some color over for the lighter areas where we've got the reflection. I love that these are refillable because I mean, even if you decide you don't like doing this type of work, you have some water brushes when you're done. Boy, it'd be something to be able to make desserts that look this good, wouldn't it? I think that's all I'm going to do for the icing. I'm not going to go any further with the drizzle because I put my plate a little too low and I wouldn't have enough room to put that stuff, wouldn't really show up where I have this sketched in. Continuing that line over here for the reflection. I'm feeling so mellow today. I hope I'm not boring anybody. Oh, we got 185 people in here on short notice. That's awesome, guys. Now, if you feel like your pen is starting to like dry, like you're not getting that much ink out, just find an area on your palette where you can squirt out a little bit. That's going to get it flowing again. And I like to do it on the palette again because I don't want to get a splat of ink on my artwork where I'm not expecting it. So that just helps me kind of keep things under control a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my watercolor brush again. Oh, I found my water brush. There we go. Let's go back to this. And I am just going to, I'll dip into the little red on my palette a little bit, and I'm just going to fill in the areas that I left white for my reflection, the reflection of the cheesecake on the syrup. And I can add a little bit of the yellow cheesecake color in there too that we had used. And I'm going to blot it because I did end up getting my, getting into the wet paint a little too much. There we go. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is make a shadow on my cheesecake. And now, here's the thing. I could add green and get a darker color, but I find that if I do a complementary color mix to darken reds, I get a more of a dead, murky color. So I'm actually going to use some of this kind of purpley deep sea color. And I'm just going to squirt it right here in my palette. This is a very strong color, so I don't recommend going right onto your picture with this because it's very overpowering. And I am going to go ahead and mix some of the red and that purple together right on my palette, so I get kind of like a maroony burgundy color. But it's dark, but it's much fresher than if I had mixed a green in. If I mixed a green in, I could have some kind of murky mud, and I just didn't want that on something that's supposed to be so fresh looking, like a dessert. So it just depends on what you are trying to color. If I'm trying to do fruits or flowers, I don't use the opposite to darken it usually. If it's a red anyway. Or if it's a purple, that will make, you wouldn't want to darken purple with yellow if you're trying to keep a fresh look. So color theory can be a little complicated, but it's one of those things where the more you paint, the more you're going to understand. So I did a big bonehead move before I went live. I was hearing this noise outside, and it sounded like the mail truck or a plow, but it was going on for a long time. So I'm like, what is going on out there? So I stood up to go see, and my foot got tangled in my computer that I monitor the chat with, and I fell. I was on the ground before I knew it. Fell on my knee and my arm. Luckily, I caught myself, but I was just like, oh man, I'm going to feel that tomorrow. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with green. This is a darker green. This one is called Siren, and it's ready to go. I just kind of scribbled it there. I didn't squeeze it, but I scribbled it to see how the ink was flowing. And I'm going to go in and put just some shadows on my leaves, just to give them a little bit of contrast. You do have to skip around a little bit unless you want to dry it in between layers. So just kind of keep that in mind. And then I feel like that green's too green, so I'm going to grab some yellow, and this is Pirate's Gold. The thing I find about these is that there's 12 colors, but since they mix so much, as long as you have like either a piece of plastic or a dish or something to mix on, you get a really nice variety of color. I wasn't even going to buy these. I'm so happy I did, though. And I want to lighten up a little bit in there because I've got that a little dark. So I'm going to go in with my Maxine's mop and just scrub and blot a little bit of a highlight there. So when you're working on student paper, one thing to note is that it's not going to take much scrubbing. So you do have to be very gentle and just kind of accept what it's going to do. Don't get too aggressive with that, or you're going to end up with pilling paper, and that's not very fun to deal with. I'm going to blast this real quick with a heat tool. Boy, you guys are chatty. I love seeing that chat go. You guys are having a good time. I shouldn't have loosened a cable, Kristen. Is there something wrong with the video? We've had a lot of ice and snow lately, so maybe that was affecting it. Last night we were trying to watch Westworld, and we're HBO Go customers, and it kept pausing. So maybe we're having some issues with the internet. Oh my gosh. Well, hopefully it holds up. It looks fine on my monitor, so hopefully we're good. Okay, so now I just want to kind of go in. I'm going to squeeze a little of this purple. This is something else you can do with these. You can pick up colors with the pens and then like on the brush tip. It shouldn't hurt anything because, oh, that's really dark, because they're bristles and you can wipe them off or rinse them off if you get too much. So I'm just going in and adding some shadows, some glossy shadows that should look nice and glossy once we get our highlights on there. I get a little bit too much in there. I'm picking that up from there. That's the thing to overcome there, is that you do end up picking up a lot more than you're expecting. I think it takes a little bit of a learning curve. So if you have any products like this, any sort of brush pens, it might take a little bit of a learning curve just to get used to how much is kind of coming out of your brush. Now I can go into just the red that comes in the brush here, and I can put another little kind of glossy, hard-edged marks. I'm going to reflect the dripping of the syrup too. You can play with this. You can play with this design quite a bit, which is fun. And the place I found the reference photo is a new favorite place. Ian shared it with me. It's called Pixabay, and they have a lot of really great public domain, copyright-free images. A lot of good reference material. A lot of good material if you just need stuff for, projects too, which is kind of nice. It's completely free. I think it's sponsored by a lot of the big companies that sell graphics. So, if you don't find just what you want for free, you can always purchase what you need. Okay, so now I'm going to grab a little brown. I'm not sure if I want to, it's awfully strong. I think I'm going to pick that up on with a brush because I think it's just a little too dark and strong on its own. Maybe add a little bit of that yellow to it. And just get the bottom of this. Now, depending on how comfortable you are with watercolor, you might choose to, do more of the piece in colored pencil, or you might decide you want to do some more of this piece in pastel instead of doing so much with the watercolor. That's completely fine. I primarily do watercolor, so I'm going to do more with as much as I can with the watercolor and then enhance it with the other stuff. So it's completely up to you how much you want to do in watercolor and how much you want to do in other media, or if you just want to leave it with the watercolor markers. I'm just putting a little texture in. Just by dabbing that. And there's probably not the best brush for it, but I'm just going to use what I have right here. All right, I'm going to hit this with my heat tool again, and then we're going to go in with the paint over pens, and I'll show you those. Grace, my water brush was under a napkin on my table. All right, luckily it doesn't take too long to dry. Okay, so the paint over pens, they're kind of fun. They do want to pick up watercolor though, because watercolor is not sealed. When it dries, it's reconstitutable, unlike acrylic. So that's just one thing to keep in mind if you're going to use these pens, that you'll need to scribble them off, and that's going to waste a little ink. So just kind of keep that in mind. These are an acrylic pen. I just saw that I was watching all that CHA coverage because, I'm a supply hoarder, obsessed with supply person. And I saw that another American crafts artist, Vicki Boutin, has a new line of mixed media stuff coming out. And she looks like she has pens like these as well. I'm not sure if they're the same. She also has a watercolor set coming out that I'm kind of interested in. It looks like she's got the teal tin, which like Jane Davenport has, but it's got 24 colors in it. And it looks like the retail on that's going to be around 24 bucks. I was just stocking it at a cherry on top. I was like looking to see if anybody like just find information about it, and they already had it listed. So I was like, I can't wait to see more about that. So it's not like a really opaque color, but I also heard that you could I was watching one of Jane Davenport's videos, and she was like shaking the pen like that to make the paint come forward more. And I'm wondering if that might give me, she also said like recap it and flick it, and I'm wondering if that might give me a more opaque mark on here. I'm not sure. Maybe just I think it's just mixing in with a red so much. And I think that's what's happening. I think it's just mixing in so much with the red that it's not going to look super, super white for me. But we got a gel pen, so I wanted to try a gel pen on this. I think that's going to look kind of cool. So this is pretty much giving us like a cast highlight, so I can like reinforce the top of the cheesecake reflection there. And then I'm scribbling it on my table because I've got just paper, like white craft paper covering my table. So I don't have to worry about that being pristine. I could put a little white down here, but I'll be covering that over with pencil. So that would just be as a base layer if I knew I wanted to have something lighter there. And that was the bold marker, bold tip. And then there's also a medium tip of these. Let's see if I have any more. You know what? Let me dry that. That first layer of the mermaid marker might seal it. And then I might be able to go over with the with another coat of it. And if it sealed down that ink, the mermaid marker ink, I think that that this one might go over and give me a nice bright effect. We just gotta dry it first. I bet you that'll work because these are acrylic, so hopefully. I'm gonna do the like flicking thing just to see if I can get a brighter white. That's a little bit brighter. It's not super white, and it does seem to still be picking up some of the pink, so I don't know. These kind of remind me of chalk markers. So if you have white chalk markers, you could do the same technique. I'm not getting that much. I don't feel like I'm getting that much color out. She was like marking it on her hands. Well, it looks white on my hand, but it's still absorbing, it seems, into my paper. I don't know what to think about that. Okay, so while that's drying, let's grab some colored pencils. I'm going to want some greens and yellows. This is watercolor paper, so this will take quite a bit of pencil, which is nice. I've got this kind of orangey yellow, and I'm going to put this kind of my lightest areas of the leaf. That's really going to warm it up. These leaves have a very warm tone to them. That in the stem there. I like to paint desserts. I'm not exactly sure why. They're so pretty. Painting a lot of portraits. Not portraits of real people, kind of like generic, imaginary people portraits, I guess. All right, now we need a dark to reinforce the contrast. This is an old one because it says Barrel Prismacolor on it, so I know that's one of my originals from when I was like a little kid. That one's been sharpened a lot. I used to get like, they'd start breaking, so I'd go sharpen it in from the other end. Not going for a ton of detail here, just to get a little bit of, show up a little bit more. I'm very sketchy with colored pencils. I don't do tons and tons of detail. I feel like I want a brighter, more lemony yellow in there, though. Let's try this one. I still use my Prismacolors a lot. I know a lot of people have kind of given up on them, but I think it's probably because I have older ones, and maybe that's why I'm still happy with them. I don't have very many newer ones. I bought a few open stock ones as needed, but I think they're still all USA made, the ones that I have. And I can also, I don't want to yet, but I can do white over for the highlights, but I think I want to try a gel pen first because generally your gel pens are a little bit more opaque. And we're getting pretty close to the end here. Just want to remind you that I will take question and answers at the end of the broadcast. For those of you that are here live, for anyone watching the replay, you can ask questions in the comments section. And we will have our normal live stream at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday as well. And that will be the last Friday live stream for 2 weeks because I will be on vacation. And I'm not near my computer. Oh, I'm surprised this white gel pen is sticking on top of the colored pencil, which surprises me. I wouldn't guarantee that that's going to work though, because generally it will skip over that waxy material, but that was kind of a nice surprise. I'll grab a white pencil. I like the Prismacolor whites because they are so opaque. I think it's just such a hard balance to find that pencil that's going to be nice and opaque, that isn't going to break every time you sharpen it. It's going to be soft. I've been using the Color Soft pencils a lot just because they have really soft leads, but yet I don't find them to be really breakable. They seem to sharpen really nicely. And they're not very expensive either for, you know, comparatively. All right. I think I'm happy with that. I think that is a fine piece of cheesecake. And if anybody's vegan, I would recommend the Daya cheesecake because that's actually pretty darn good. And even my kids think it's very cheesecakey. They're usually not as impressed with the vegan options that I present them with. I made tofu nuggets for dinner last night. That was not a hit. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Please put the word question in all caps so I'll know that you have a question for me, and I will answer. Yes, Eve, Daya does make cheesecake, and it's pretty darn good, and it's crazy fattening and caloric, though. It is like, it's awful. It's not healthy at all. Oh, yes, if anybody has any video requests, I have a page on my website, and Dominic just linked that up. If you have any requests, you can leave them right there. Question, if you had to choose between one of Jane D's watercolor sets and these markers, which would you pick? I'm trying to choose. If you're going to get these markers, get the neutral watercolors because you're not going to have overlap in colors. Question, do these mermaid markers seem to use up a lot of ink quickly? No, I don't think so, but you know, they don't come filled all the way to the top. So no, I don't think so. I think that it's very concentrated, but I would use liquid watercolor to refill them. I like the Blick brand and the Sargent brand of liquid watercolors. Very cheap, very high quality, and I use them to also make my sprays. You could also use your re-inkers, but if you're using re-inker, you will need to add a little water to it because like your dye-based re-inker, such as Stampin' Up! Re-inker, is so concentrated. You'd want to put like probably half re-inker, half water. Otherwise, it's just going to be so strong that it's almost going to be unusable, and you'll probably waste quite a bit. Question, would you recommend a brand of colored pencil for newbies to watercolor, please? Well, if you want a watercolor pencil, I'm actually a really big fan of Derwent products. I like Derwent's Color Soft for a wax colored pencil, and I like Derwent's Inktense for a water-based, water-soluble pencil because they're kind of middle of the road as far as expense, but they're very high quality, and you can buy open stock if you use one up, or if you just want to buy a few, you can do that. Question, who was the artist you mentioned that is coming out with a mixed media line? Vicky Boutin through American Crafts. Oh, shoot, I just missed a question. Question, would you recommend these mermaid markers for a Bible journaler? You know, I don't know. A friend of mine does Bible journaling, and she says they make a thicker, like a note-taking Bible, so maybe they'd be all right. They're awfully juicy. They don't bleed through on watercolor paper, but I don't know. I think they might if it was a really thin paper. Question, do you like these markers or the watercolor she released better? I like the markers. If I had to pick one, I'd pick the markers, not the watercolor, honestly. I like the watercolors, don't get me wrong, but I have a lot of watercolors. The markers are unique, and the quality of the brush tips are very nice. How do they compare to Winsor & Newton watercolor markers? The biggest difference, they're apples and oranges. The Winsor & Newton watercolor markers are light fast. These are not light fast. These will fade. The Winsor & Newton markers, watercolor markers use pigment, and they have a felt tip, brush tip, and a bullet tip. They're double-ended. They're just two different things. It just depends on, the Winsor & Newton ones blend better. If you want to lift back, you can lift back. I would say it just depends. Do you want the water brush or do you want the non-refillable but light fast marker? You know, it's apples to pears. I like them both. How can I improve my artwork with watercolor pencil? Kevin Crespo asks. It's just like anything. Draw, paint, paint, paint. Oh, why not use a darker red for shadowing? I used the darkest red I had. Then I needed a little bit of purple in there to make it show up a little bit darker. What's a good water-resistant ink for stamping? I like Ranger Archival or Stampin' Up! Basic Black or Basic Gray. Both of those are great. If I missed your question, please pop it in there again. I know a couple got by me, and I'm afraid if I go back, I'm going to get all out of order. So if you see that I missed you, please just pop it in there again. I'm going to try to go back and get some, but oh, Grace says, why you make paintings that look so good? I'm hungry. I know. Isn't it funny? It's like I don't eat all this. I'm on a diet, but I want to paint cupcakes and cheesecakes and all those things. I don't know. I don't know. It must be trying to trick myself. Oh, maybe I did catch them all. Okay, I think I might have. I think I might be caught up. I'm going to go to the end and see if any new questions have come up. Yes, I have Gnome Yo. Yes, I have done some watercolor pencil videos. I have a watercolor pencil 101 that's like an hour and a half long. It's very like everything you want to know about watercolor pencils, tons of techniques. You can find that on my channel if you just search watercolor pencil. And I'll take a couple more questions and I'm going to wrap it up. Tracy Logan wonders what pencils would you recommend? Well, like I said, I like anything by Derwent, except their metallic pencils are garbage, but anything else they make is really high quality and I enjoy them. Just depends on the colors that you want. Okay, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining live. I really appreciated you guys taking time out of your busy day. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. And the replay will be available later on today for anybody who came in late. Actually, if you stay on this page, you should be able to start the video right over again when we're done if you want to. If you had a question that I didn't get to, please put it in the comments after the video is done. And please hit that thumbs up button before you leave. There we go, grammar. I know grammar. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.